Hello and welcome to another live demonstration. Today I want to introduce you to 3 new colours in the SAA watercolour range. So these are green gold, olive green and poppy red. They're nice summer colours, especially while we're having a meltdown because of the snow in Britain. So it's nice to think of some nice summery colours. So first thing, as with any colour, is just to do some good swatches. So doing swatches using a natural hairbrush, because they just give such a nice even spread of colour. Really have to wet. Even when you think you've wet it, it's not wet enough because you need to allow the water to get right into the hair. So it's a really good soaking. And as much as I don't like it, I will leave the brush in for a few minutes just to make sure it gets very wet. I don't like leaving brushes in a pot of water because it tends to kink the hair and it can allow water to go up the handle and crack the handle. So I am quite careful about not leaving them in water, but you do need to make sure a natural hairbrush has plenty of water. So quick flick and you can see how that's brought it back to a point. So just take off some excess water and we'll start with the poppy red. Now this fits really nicely into the SAA colour range because it's that orange red that we were missing. So just, again, it's because my brush isn't wet enough. So hopefully a lot wetter. That's better. So you can see the difference. So a really lovely orange red. And again, you don't always see the full potential of a watercolour until it's dried. So we'll see that once it's dried. Just going to do another swatch underneath. The reason for this is because I haven't seen it in its full, really nice lower tones. Just that lovely warm. So with watercolour you can get from the really dark right up to the really light and soft colours. And you can see there all that range. So next one I'm going to look at is the green gold. So this is a really bright yellow green. Yes, it's a green and you always recommend that you mix your own. I have no problem with that. Mix your own, see what yellows and blues work. But sometimes it's nice just to have a colour that's ready to go, and you can use it for different reasons other than just using it as a green for grasses or trees. You can use it as a background colour. Whereas you want consistency, because if you have to mix blue and yellow to make the green, you've got to make sure you mix enough, because you won't actually be able to really mix that exact same colour very easily, because watercolours are a little bit difficult to do that. So you don't know exactly the right amount of blue to the right amount of yellow. You may mix it very close, but it's really nice to have a ready mixed green that you know every time you put your brush in, it's consistent. So again, just picking up the colour, and let's see if I can get the full range in one go. I need to just make it a little lighter. And you can see how bright that was. Look, so this is why I do those 2 tones. So you can see there, that lovely glowing, how it allows the paper to glow through. The reason is, these are, I think the red's transparent, semi-transparent, and the olive green, which I'm just going to do now, is again semi-transparent. And it's really obvious when it's very wet. So the olive green, look at that, that's such a lovely colour. And you can alter it by adding a little bit more yellow, a little bit more blue, a little bit of red, which really makes a much more woody green. So again, that much lighter swatch.
Anita?
Yes.
A couple of questions for you from Chrissy in Australia. She wants to know, what's the viscosity of these paints? Are they nice and creamy before they get mixed with water? Because it does vary.
They are. I mean, colours will vary in their viscosity, even across a range. The reason is the pigments. It depends how the pigment used. So some pigments, like say a Naples yellow, often is quite heavy and thick. So you squeeze it out, it kind of has the consistency of toothpaste. Doesn't matter when you mix it, you can dilute it. But other colours, like I've just squeezed these out now, including another colour which I'm going to be using in a minute, and they're very creamy, really nice and soft. I was comparing the wet tubes to pans the other day, and I know why I love using paint straight from the tube, because you get such really rich colours straight away, and they are creamy and they feel nice. With the pan, you often have to pick up a lot more colour in order to get this really intense colour straight away. As much as I try to, I actually really love strong colour in watercolour. The lighter colours I try and do, but then I overdo and go, oh, I need a bit more colour, I need a bit more colour. It's just me. But this is why I've done these 2 swatches, just to show how much more subtle it can be compared to the strength. But yeah, those 3 colours and a lot of colours in this range are nice and creamy, and that's a really nice thing to work with and feel. I can allow them to dry on the palette so they're not wasted, and then pick them up at a later date. But when they're fresh like this, they're really lovely to work with. So let's just have a little play and a mixing of these 3 colours. This isn't something you would normally do. You wouldn't just get 3 colours and then see how they mix together, because you've got so many other colours, and you would mix them and see how they work with other colours. So colour charts are something you do very regularly. And then you kind of learn naturally. You get an instinct to know what colours will mix. So I know if I mix these 2 colours together, I'm not going to get a huge difference. So let's have a go. They're 2 greens. It may lighten, but I'm not going to make a very big difference in the green. It's that colour but slightly yellower, so you can see how that's worked. And I guess if I mix the greens with the red, I'm going to make a more of a dull browny green. And that's because I'm used to the colours, and I'm used to knowing what colours will happen where. So let's just pick up some of the green gold and a little bit of the red. And it's made a little bit more of an orange. Let's see if I can put a little bit more green in, see if that changes. So it's made a kind of a nice orange, and I'm sure if I put this in, it would make it a little bit deeper, a bit more muddy. So mixing these 3 colours together, or mixing the red and the green, you're not really creating huge differences in colour. But this is quite nice. This is quite nice if you want to use them. But if you mix them with other colours, that's where you will see some nice changes. So what I'm going to do is, I've done swatches, which is always useful, because this is something you can keep for reference. You could write down your pigment numbers, whether it's transparent, whether it's permanent. So these are transparent or semi-transparent, and they've all got either good or excellent permanence rating. So all good to go. I'm going to do a little landscape, because these are nice summery colours, and it's just something other than the obvious, I'm going to say obvious poppy, but I will be putting poppies in the landscape, which this colour is fabulous for. The colours just shout at me, a spring, warm, sunny landscape. So let's have a quick go. I might just sketch out. So here, new colours. So can I just drop it down? I didn't know if it was too wet, that's all. So this is what I'm going to do. I've added the ultramarine just to add the blue, but you can see how adding it to the olive green can darken. So just adding one colour can really just give that little bit of depth, which you can't get from the olive green. But I was just seeing how these greens work well together. And here, it's just a very simple green gold in the background, and then using the olive green in the foreground, just to see the contrast. And here again, a little bit of corn, just using that lovely green gold in the background. And it's, I know mixing your own greens are great, but how easy is it just to pick it up and put it on as a background colour? And I know it's consistent. So we'll have a go at this little landscape in the background. So I need it here because I can't remember what I'm doing. Just give me an idea of what I want to achieve. This is just me thinking about, there's a tree there possibly, and trees there. It looks very untidy, but for me, I just need to give myself a guide. Doesn't matter if it turns out exactly the same, but it's enough for me to know where things are. So I'm going to actually add a different colour because I wanted to bring a sky into that composition. I could have pushed it all forward and not had any blue. I think the blue just adds it together. And like I said, I mixed it with the green to darken off areas. So natural hair brush, I haven't really wet it enough. So just make sure it's got plenty of wet. There we go. But you can see even now I think it's wet enough. It isn't quite, and how it works when it is wet and how it works when you think it's wet enough. So let's just take colour down. Just put the colour on and moving it round. I only want a light wash. I'm feeling this brush isn't big enough just on this small area. And this is something you do need to consider. Just think, is the brush big enough? If you feel you're having to go over that same area too many times, your brush isn't big enough. So adding some blue into the foreground just to bring it all together. I might even bring this down a little bit more. Okay, so while that's still a little wet, I'm going to get a little bit of bleeding. So I need it a little bit wet. My water's a little contaminated, it's a little green, so it's not quite as fresh as it might be, but that's not a problem. Like I say, even if I've got clean water, I forget to use it anyway. So let's just use some of this olive green, very wet, and just drop in some colour. Okay. Oh, Gary's brought me a clean pot. I've just got to now remember to use it. Thank you, Gary.
As if by magic.
As if by magic. I will still forget to use it, but I will try, seeing as you have gone out of your way to get me a new clean pot. So use this. Here, you see I've just dropped colour in the top. That doesn't matter. If I want to fix that, I let it dry first. Right, I think I'm being a bit too soft. Let's be a bit braver. Stop fluffing around. And I will talk to myself and tell myself to stop overthinking things. Because I had that colour on my brush, I've just brought it down. So let's see if I can just, even while this is still wet and it's moved, you can see how much that's moved. Let's just bring this down. So that was a natural hairbrush. I'm going to move to a synthetic brush because for me, I like the control. I like a slightly stiffer natural hair feel. So I'm going to be much happier working with this. That's better for me. That's so much better. But you're often asked which is the best brush for watercolour. It's whatever works for you, whatever you feel comfortable using. And for me, I like the synthetic. So at the moment, this all looks quite a bit of a puddle. And that's great for a background. What I'm really thinking about is keeping my lights. And that really lovely green gold gives such wonderful light colours. Look at that, that's fabulous.
Anita?
Yes?
What paper are you using?
The paper, I know what I'm using. To be honest, it wouldn't bother me what paper I was using, as long as I'm using a good quality paper. It just happened to be the only paper I picked up. So it's a Saunders Waterford, not 425. It just happened to be one I grabbed. I haven't consciously thought about using this as a paper. It's a really nice, high quality artist paper. And I know it's going to give me the look that I want. See how soft it is and giving those lovely soft edges. If I didn't want quite as much soft edges, I would choose something like a cellulose paper, a Bockingford. But the truth is, it's just the first one I picked up. But it is very wonderful to give you that softness. Okay, let's just add some. So I'm just plotting where the light is, because I want that's going to not be touched again. So lovely light across here. And see if it drops in. Okay, what I might need to do is I'm just going to fill in all the background area. And you can see, just using those two greens, how well they actually complement each other. Don't know if this is going to work because I want a nice clean edge. And I think once I've put this background on, we'll take a short break. What that does is allow the paper to dry, and then I can start getting much more sharp edges. So these are the soft undertones. Look at that, in that lovely, still keeping that lovely. I think, alongside Poppy Red, because red is my favourite colour, I think the green gold is going to be one of my favourite colours. Let's put some dark under here. I can see how that's starting to dry. I'm just really thinking about keeping that stretch of light across there without touching it. Okay, so I think that's a good chance for me to take a short break. I can get that dried and then come back and just start to work back, adding a little bit more detail. So join me in a minute after this short break.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
First thing you'll be a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
it seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're live.
Hello and welcome back. So in that short break I've had a chance to dry because now I want to start to think about adding detail. So I'm going to work on these background colours. What I need to be very careful is I don't want them to be too sharp. They still need to be quite soft because they're in the background, so it's aerial perspective makes them a little softer. And just need to, because at the moment this looks like it's creating a round blob of trees, which I don't like.
Anita.
Yes.
I have a question from Sue.
Hello, Sue.
Sue says, are you in favour of the loose look for watercolour? She's a beginner and that's all she hears, but she likes to see detail. What do you think?
Right. I actually don't mind. I love the look of loose. But to be honest, it's actually quite difficult to achieve because I don't know if you're like me, but you always want to do a bit more and add a bit more. So what I do, you'll often hear me talk about textures in my painting. So here there are different textures, i.e. there's different tones, all done with the same colour, but there's different tones. So that's quite loose, but for me it's controlled. I haven't done every single leaf. So I think the main thing is to practice, keep trying different techniques that you see and learn from everybody, but don't get overwhelmed with knowing and learning one technique. So it doesn't have to be loose, doesn't have to be totally sharp. Just try everything. Thank you, Gary. Gary's cleaned my water pots and I'm going to make a huge effort to remember to keep one clean and one dirty. So, like I say, a lot of it is just try for yourself. You know, try that loose. You may get a little frustrated that it doesn't work, because I actually find it very difficult. Try a less loose style, put a little bit of detail in, or try quite detailed, which again is quite hard. So just try all the different artists you can find and all their different styles and just have a go. You'll end up finding something you're comfortable with or you enjoy. I think enjoy is the key to it. So enjoy what you're doing. But yes, loose is a lovely style, but I find it quite difficult because it just isn't enough. You just think, oh, I just need a little bit more. So it's practice. It's the key thing is just keep trying. See what works with you. And the same with mediums, to be honest. A lot of people are given a watercolour set and then they expect themselves to be able to know what to do with it. And that's not actually that easy because there's quite a lot of techniques, knowing how much water or how little water to put in. Again, that comes with practice. So a lot of artists will have had a brush in their hand since they were a child, or constantly doodling, constantly drawing. So technically they're practicing all the time. And I know because I like to bring lots of different techniques and different products to you and show you them. I actually have to learn them. So there are things like a new pencil, a new way of a technique, and I have to learn, and I will learn by doing lots and lots of practicing, seeing what works, seeing how other artists use it, and then find a way that I can bring it to you. Okay, so starting to add a little bit of dark, and this is where I'm using that French ultramarine again with the olive green, just to now start to. Now, I'm not a landscape painter, and I resist painting landscapes because as much as I love being in a landscape, I can't always see how it's appealing to paint. I can't see all the colours, so I do admire these great landscape artists who can see wonder in sometimes the most inane objects or subjects, you know, a stone, and yet they can see all the colours in it. So landscapes aren't my forte, but as with everything, I will practice, because I don't want to be stuck going, I can't do landscapes. Well, there may not be something I find easy, as say a figure or animal, but I want to be able to do landscapes. So this is why so just adding some dark. So under the trees, this is where it is just going to catch the shadow. But I'm being, again, very careful to keep this light. I think I need a little bit of dark here, just. And you can see I'm not even following a photograph. I'm following something that I probably used from a photograph, I honestly can't remember, but then added details and features along the way. Okay, that's fine. Let's work, because I can always go back to that. The main thing is let it dry, because with watercolour, letting it dry will often give you a different view. I talk about walking away, because I can't really do that in a live. Well, I can, but I'm sure Gary would have a meltdown. But it does help you to come back and reevaluate. So these trees here are, brush is too small. So I feel I'm just doing too much. So I'm going in with, this is a synthetic, just a bigger size. Doesn't take as much to load with water. And I was using a tiny brush, but I felt I was just dotting around too much. So get the brush to do the work for you. Much bigger brush. Trying to keep the highlight. And that's much better, much happier with that. So it's not just the medium, it's also the tool you use. Try different tools. Often, the bigger the brush, the actually much more comfortable you are with it. At first, you'll go, oh, can't use a big brush. No, and you'll be comfortable with a small brush or a brush no bigger than a pen or pencil, when actually you might get better results with a bigger brush or a different kind of brush, because I know Kolinsky is supposed to be the best for watercolour, and it is. It's fantastic to work watercolour. You get beautiful clean lines, but again, for me, it's not, I'm not that comfortable using it for everything. You can see there, let's just add some colour. And I'm going to probably come back, but you can see with that darkness how that's pushed it forward. I don't like the shape overly. I think I could do more, but this is just a quick little demo. And so I'm going to stop, move on to the next feature. And this is, these wonderful shadows are really sharp. So just making sure I keep clean lines, just to show shadows. And that's with that lovely olive green across there. So the light is not being caught across here. So because this is more in a foreground, I can start to bring some much stronger colours. And that just makes everything we see. This may be a little bit strong, but I can fix that once it's dried. I'm not going to overwork that, because I think that's already worked itself. So now, even with the big brush, just pick up the tip and add some grasses. Yeah, not put the poppies in, but I'm going to put those in last, because I want to talk about another feature of these three colours. So again, if you notice how I hold my brush in different ways, and this is another way of getting those different marks. So a lot of people will hold it like a pen for everything, but you hold it lots of ways to just feel that looseness of it. It's not easy. Again, it takes practice because you have lots of many years learning to write and hold a pen. Your hand is familiar with that. So it isn't always easy just to. And I don't know if you ever noticed, but I'm actually standing, and I stand even in the studio. The reason is you have so much more movement than if I'm sitting. If I'm sitting, I tend to feel tense and get overwhelmed. Doesn't mean I don't sit for some things. If I'm working a little bit more controlled, maybe I will sit. But standing, just for me, it feels good. I'm like that. I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to think about this back. I'm going to soften it. It got a bit too harsh.
Anita?
Yes.
Sue would like to know, she's got a foliage brush. Are you a fan of using foliage brushes?
I like anything. Anything that gets you painting, gets you making marks on a piece of paper, I'm absolutely a fan of. I will use black in my work. I will use ready mixed greens. Doesn't stop you learning to mix your own blacks, to use your greens, to use a foliage brush, which gives you some lovely grasses. So use any tool that you've got, even if it's a stick, if it works. So just have fun, have a play. Don't expect to do a perfect piece every time. Okay, so I've just softened this off because it was a bit too harsh for background. So I just have gone a little bit too strong in. And this is where it's easy enough to correct things. And if I'd walked away and come back, I would have seen that. Possibly, I could even go further back. And there's tools that can take you back, something like a magic eraser. I can really lift off and add some more sunlight. But I'll do this again. If I'm not happy with it, I do it again. But I always keep the first one I've done. Even if you're not happy with it, keep the piece of work that you're not happy with, put it to one side and come back to it, because you will really surprise yourself. You get overwhelmed and you overthink things if you're doing something constantly. So there's lots of pieces I can keep working on, but I'm just going to start to finish off and add the poppies. So I've covered that area with colour, and I want to add this lovely bright red. The great thing about these three colours is I discovered is that they're very good for lifting. So this is just a clean brush. It is clean, look, clean water, Gary, thank you. And I'm just adding little droplets of water onto the paper. You possibly can't see anything at the moment, but they will lift off. Well, they did last time. I'm sure they will. I just don't want big ones in the background. I want small ones.
Mind your head.
Sorry. Let it soak in. You can pop off. They're not working this time. What I'm probably not doing is being brave enough. So just putting these little water droplets and just scrub into, because I was really pleased how well the green lifted when I tried it first time. And I think it's just a case of, I'm not quite doing the same as I did. Here we go. It's starting to now. I can see the colour starting to lift. I wasn't pushing the colour enough. Let's see. There we go. I can see the light coming through. I want to really show you. Could be I'm using a different kitchen roll that isn't taking it off enough.
Different paper, maybe?
Yeah, possibly. I think I did it on a practice paper. So it is lifting off a little bit. You can't see it, so it's not lifting off as much as I would have expected. But like Gary said, I've changed papers. So again, your papers are really sensitive to your techniques. So the one I tried was a cellulose paper, which obviously the surface on it allows a lot more lifting, whereas this is a very soft paper and it's allowing a lot more absorption. So it's something else to consider. This is why I have lots of different papers and we'll try the same thing on different papers, because a technique like this lifting works better on a different paper. So it's not a fault of the paper or the product, it's often a characteristic. So yes, Gary, actually realising I've used a different paper. So, but I'm going to, this doesn't stop me just dropping in some of these lovely red colours. And what I've got to be really careful is not to make them all very even. I need little clusters. And obviously the ones in the background are going to be a little softer. We had a lovely poppy field just down the end of the road, but now it's a building site. It's really sad when you go past it, because it was wonderful. It's full of poppies. That's enough. And then start in here. So even though I wasn't able to do that lifting out technique, and it took Gary to point out that I've used a different paper, it's working. It's still giving those poppies, because they won't be bright red because they still will be surrounded by the green anyway. Again, I'm just clustering, and the poppies in the foreground are a little bigger. What I will have to just think about is, it's ever so hard. Your human brain likes things spread quite evenly, and this is where you have to think about where the placement of the poppies are. They are in clusters, but you don't want them cluster, 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 cluster. So I'm just thinking about where I would see, or where it works. And again, this is why I've put masking tape down, to go up and over. So this, I've got nothing here to break up. Just try not to have things too even. So this is where you take a break, you come back and you reevaluate. And I can keep going, but I'm going to stop. So you can see how those three colours can be worked alongside just one other colour to make the lovely fresh green. I love that green gold. It's a lovely green, and the reds worked really well. So talked about brushes, talked about paper, talked about colour. So I hope you enjoyed that little demonstration. Final little reveal, which is actually very satisfying. And actually, you can be really disappointed with a painting and go, don't like it. But once you do this, something suddenly brings it all together and you go, actually, that really works. So using a mount or putting tape round your work just kind of finishes it. Even a piece that isn't supposed to be a finished piece, it's just very satisfying to have that lovely and stand back from it. So I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry the lifting out didn't work, but you can see how it works with different papers. So join me next week. I'm just trying to think. So join me next week for another live demonstration. Actually, I've just remembered, join us with Vic Beercroft on Tuesday for a wonderful pastel workshop, and then join me later in the week for another live demonstration.